The First Amendment of the United States Constitution protects several rights. Of course, they include the freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and the freedom of assembly, to name just a few. Now, these freedoms are under attack and they must be defended or we will lose them forever. Today on The Mom View, a freedom warrior and her attorney join us to talk about an unjust lawsuit that is trying to punish her family for just expressing their conservative opinion. Stay with us. Welcome to The Mom View. We're so glad that you're joining us this week. Right here on the set, along with all of our regular co-host mamas, we have two special women in the house. We have Sharona Bishop and we have Sarah Lamb. So glad to have you ladies on the couch with us. We are all moms and we designed this program for moms for every walk of life. Maybe you don't hear your viewpoints expressed in the media today, or you don't feel that there's balanced viewpoints. Well, that's why we are here, to offer another side to the issues that moms face, right? One of the big issues of the day is the slow erosion of our freedoms. So moms, we are talking about freedom today. Yes, Joeylynn later in the show, an incredible story, but these things are happening all across the country to moms that are just having an opinion. They want to share something. They're canceling us, they're bullying us, or even putting us in jail.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you, I'm going to tell you someone who came from a country that happens a lot, right? It's just scary.
It is scary.
It's very scary.
And it's not just sharing your opinion. You can share information and be canceled. I mean, I've been canceled a few times on several social media platforms, and there are people that have had their accounts removed and locked, and they can't get back in, and then you lose all of your photos and all of your videos that, we've placed on social media, and it's just for expressing an opinion or sharing information that's actually true.
I know you're going to share a story with us, Sharona, but in Moms for America, Vimeo completely, how about it, Kimberly?
Oh yeah, we were wiped off the planet.
Canceled all of our training videos.
And we were
for
permanently
years
suspended from Twitter. Right. And if it weren't for Elon Musk, we would still be suspended. So
thank you,
thank goodness for him.
It's crazy to me to wonder who is determining what is free speech, who is determining what speech is okay to be heard, what's hate speech, what's this fearful agenda that constantly limits transparency. And I think one of the things that was most disturbing to me, what was very telling about the direction we were going in. My husband received his first disciplinary action in 2021 when he spoke at a school board meeting. He worked for Colorado State Judicial, and he was told not to speak at public meetings.
Wow.
And then from there, he brought up the Constitution in a meeting and was told, we do not talk about the Constitution in a judicial setting. So when you see the judiciary literally saying, oh, we're not talking about the Constitution, we're not allowing these freedoms, these are not yours anymore, we don't actually surrender those. And people in government, people who are actually doing this, who are they're the ones who are analyzing and determining who gets to say what, whose opinion matters.
Who's the boss?
Who's doing
it?
It's
not even social media either. It's these pay programs, right? Like PayPal and what is it? Oh my gosh, I can't remember the other ones. But there's so many that have, once you have been canceled from social media, they automatically take you off of being able to raise money for a cause or for you getting money for a cause. It's insane.
It's even gotten to the point where they're dealing with elections, like as in Sarah's.
Yeah, tell us about that, Sarah.
So I ran for Texas House in 2022. My race was unique. I actually came in after the primary as a replacement nominee. The precinct chairs appointed me or voted for me to be the replacement candidate after the previous Republican nominee was removed for residency errors, if you will. And then when I was officially on the ballot, my opponent, a Democrat, filed an appeal in the Supreme Court of Texas to have me removed from the ballot.
Oh my!
Stated that we had kind of circumvented due process, and therefore he should basically be appointed the role of the Texas House member, if you will. But fortunately, Ken Paxton's office wrote a beautiful brief. We had a legal team to help get us across the finish line, and ultimately the Supreme Court determined that the voters had a right to have a choice at the ballot, and so therefore I got to remain on the ballot. But it certainly was kind of one of those circumstances where you saw Democrats trying to kind of quash First Amendment or those having a freedom of choice and freedom to select the candidate they prefer.
It's
about
exactly
a lot of
what they did
bullying.
with Kamala. They chose her
that's right.
to be the presidential candidate.
Not elected, but
Silencing
selected.
all of the Democrat voters.
Completely disenfranchise them while they say that they care about the disenfranchised. It's wild.
So can I just share the story of praying grandma Rebecca Lavrin, 72 years old. She goes to the Capitol on January 6th. She prays on the Capitol steps, goes inside for a few minutes. It's all documented on film, all of it. And literally, that's what she went there to do, was to pray. It's all recorded and documented. They attempted to show it at her trial, was not allowed to be admitted as evidence, by the way, which the Constitution guarantees you can submit the evidence that defends you. At any rate, she was found guilty. She had used Give, Send, Go to raise money. Lawyer fees are like $160,000, right? These judges are using those platforms to determine how much they're going to make your fine. So $110,000 fine for the praying grandma. They're 72 years old. And one condition of her sentencing also was no public speech. None. No social media speech, no public speech of any kind during her 6-month house arrest. It's things like this. So when we talk about weaponization or we talk about silencing the First Amendment, it's not necessarily that the government said you may not speak. However, in this case, they absolutely did. It's the fear that permeates through our culture, through our communities, through our culture, that says we're not going to talk because government is just waiting to shut me down, silence me, or advance this lifelong lawfare on me that I can never possibly afford.
It's okay for you to speak if you agree with them.
Exactly.
And that is really the crux of all this. If you agree with the left or the progressives or the liberals or the feminists, your voice is wide open. You can speak and say and do all you
And
want.
you get to win all the elections.
Right?
Yeah,
but if
that's
you have an
true.
opposing view, which is the freedom of speech, what else is the freedom of speech but opposing views? And working it out in the public square. You cannot do that without being shut down, bullied, or possibly thrown in jail.
What I am starting to see is a lot of people stepping up and not just using the freedom of speech, but the freedom of their wallet to make decisions on what's important to them and their family values. I'm starting to see a lot of these big corporations that have been hurt, the stock market and their bottom line and their profits based on people withholding, their money and spending it at these establishments. I mean, we've seen kind of Target roll back a little bit based on kind of their Pride Month, offerings last year. We just saw. Harley Davidson just kind of roll back some of their DEI initiatives based on some of where America has been,
I could just say Harley Davidson, seriously?
Well, even Bud Light, we saw
That's true.
These are just, so it's incredible though, because power of speech is, and freedom of speech is not just, spoken or written, it's also how we spend our money. So I think that's a very powerful tool that I think a lot of people forget. And we're seeing a lot of reforms coming from corporate level based on how we spend our money.
And that's because we're still a country where boycotting works.
That's right.
There's countries where you cannot boycott.
doesn't matter
It doesn't
otherwise,
work, right? And we have to remember that even in these really hard times, and people are amazed across the globe of how bad has become in the United States because we have been known for freedom. People come from all over the place for that freedom that we are losing very, very slowly.
I would say we're on a more of a warp speed. I just testified in Tina Peters' trial last 2 weeks ago now, and right before I went to testify, there was a big tussle in the courtroom. This is right before I'm about to exercise my right to speak on behalf of the situation. There's a big tussle, and they use fear, they use the bullying tactics, but they literally had a conference about whether or not I could implement the Fifth and protect myself from criminal investigation afterwards. So literally real-time threats to shut and silence people who know the truth, who can provide the evidence. And it's very jarring. But imagine this for people who literally are going about their everyday. I think about those who've stood outside the abortion clinics, and they've only exercised their free speech and their right to be on that public square. And they've literally faced FBI raids. This is happening. It really is. And so for mothers across the country to understand why it's so intrinsically necessary that our kids understand the value of freedom and exactly what their rights are. And that's what Moms for America does. Empowers mothers to train up their children so they know what freedom is. And I think we're on a warp speed with CISA being involved, with the FBI we know now was collaborating with Twitter to literally take down accounts, but also to harvest information to use it for retaliation. This is unheard of. This only happens in these communist bloc countries. And so, you were there at the mega event, Make Europe Great Again. What were they saying?
They were we're going right back to the whole Stalin days. And when you're in a country where they went through all of that, and that was one of the things that I said when I spoke there is, we've had this from the very beginning. We've had freedom from the very beginning. You guys didn't have it. You got it back, and now we're throwing it away. Mm-hmm. And they were like, if you lose America, there is no, we all lose. Yeah. We all lose.
All right, ladies, thank you, sir. We're going to continue with this discussion right after this because we have a homeschooling mom that's going to join us to talk about how she and her husband were targeted and sued by the Biden campaign staffers simply because they expressed their opinion. They were supporters of Donald Trump. Well, that sure can get you in trouble today, ladies. All right, Mom, stay with us. We'll be right back.
Do you think America is having an identity crisis?
Yes, very much so. My people perish for lack of knowledge.
There's a lot of targeting of conservative children.
That they're coming after the children. It's like, you know what? We have to do something. This is war.
Professors and students are trained in a particular kind of way, and that there's indoctrination that takes place that you're not aware of.
All the curriculum was dumbed down, and we moved away from teaching knowledge, facts, and information, and instead indoctrinated kids with attitudes, values, and beliefs that most parents don't believe and don't want their children believing.
The globalists that want to reshape the globe are a elite group, a small group of gatekeeper elites.
Our children are being formed, they're being shaped by a system that is actually designed to turn them away from God, to turn them away from the principles that are at the foundation of our country, really even to turn them against their families.
That the condition of the land is always directly related to the condition of God's people's hearts. And so we're now maybe facing national judgment.
Now what we're up against is the establishment. We see that we need to have some kind of a healthy revolution. We would always say a nonviolent revolution, but there has to be a revolution. Otherwise, we're going to go down because these foxes are part of a world order. They're globalists, they're not Americans, and they'll sink this ship.
Just think of the power of those 3 words, just a mom. You are fighting for something that means more to you than anything in the world, your children.
There are patriots like you and me fighting against the globalist agenda in order to preserve our republic. I want you to meet them and be inspired. Are you ready? Let's go.
Welcome back to the Mom View. Joining us today is Joeylynn Mesaros. Now, Joeylynn is a homeschooling mom who didn't even know who to vote for back in 2016. Then she did some research on the candidates and the issues, and, well, it got kind of crazy then. Welcome, Joeylynn, to the Mom View. We're so glad to have you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. This is actually very exciting. I'm thrilled to be a part of this show.
All right. Well, before we get into your story, we do have to say that when your story became a national news, those women on The View were making fun of you, right?
They may have said that I was an emboldened racist bigot that had crawled out from under my rock.
Oh my God.
So I can say this is God at work restoring what the enemy meant for bad. Now we can see it for good on Counterculture, the Mom View.
Yes, well, we will not say those things about you. We think that you are a freedom warrior and really a great representative of a mom who said, don't mess with me, don't mess with my family, and don't mess with my freedom. So tell the moms, tell the girls a little bit about the beginning of your story, and we'll kind of walk down this road with you.
So in 2020, Debbie, I didn't know if I was going to vote for Biden or for Trump. I didn't really know where my values aligned. I was not politically engaged. And I started having these conversations with friends, and they said, well, if you don't vote for Biden, you're a racist, and if you think you're going to vote for Trump, you need to sit there in silence and think about your white privilege. And I'm like, this just doesn't make sense to me. What do these words mean? What is this? That was my first experience with cancel culture. And so as the more I researched, I realized my values aligned with Trump and I needed some new friends. And so we found...
That's why you're with us here today.
I found my people.
Right.
And so we saw these Trump trains driving around our town in a parade with flags flying on the back, and we thought that looks like a pretty good place to meet some new friends.
All right, so you jump in. Look, girls, look at this.
Yeah.
This is
Wow,
they decorate their
that's pretty
car.
cool.
They put up some Trump flags and they join this parade.
Seems pretty harmless.
Yes, actually won an award for that. I got first place decorated for that.
Nice.
And Trump hair on it.
I love the Trump hair.
I mean, spinning off of Joeylyn's stories here real quick, I mean, we've all had a flag. We've all maybe marched. We've all been a part of a parade. Yeah. This is now illegal?
It is, especially wearing that red hat, right? When you wear that red hat, it's like you're a threat.
Yeah.
You walk into a store and they want to kick you out. They ask you to remove the hat. When have you heard that?
That's right. That's right. And an American flag. If you fly an American flag,
Oh
people
my
already know who you're voting for.
That's right. That right there is what's
Yes.
so interesting. Seriously, this is our country. This is America. So what happened on the day of the parade? I mean, it's quite an honor to be mentioned on The View. You must be triggering that.
You were stirring it up, girl.
A badge of honor.
A badge of honor. Yes.
Yes, so we had been part of the local Trump trains in New Braunfels, Texas for about 2 to 3 weeks. And then we learned that the Biden-Harris campaign bus would be driving through New Braunfels, Texas. And we thought, wow, that'll be a really fun way to make the news, to show our support for President Trump. Our Trump trains had already been picking up national news because of the size of them. We were having 4,000 people turn out. Wow. And so we thought, if the Biden-Harris campaign bus is coming through, how fun would that be? And so we drove next to that bus with Trump flags, never imagining in a million years what would transpire. But Biden, came out on a press release and said we ran the bus off the road, which literally never happened.
Right.
In fact, they were trying to push you off the road.
That's right. We're going to get to see footage today from inside the bus that actually tells the true story of what happened that day. And it has been a fight for the last 4 years to actually advocate for the truth and to have a voice as a homeschool mom and a regular American who does not have access to the mainstream media narratives to actually say, hang on a second, that isn't what happened that day.
Well, not to mention legal fees. 4 years of legal fees, I cannot even imagine. Again, this is the weaponization we're talking about. You're not free to express your opinion. And once you were a little bit too loud or made them a little uncomfortable, they used all of their resources to come after you. It's just bizarre to have regular, everyday Americans being attacked this way.
I never would have thought as an American or as a Texan this would ever be something I was faced with.
Right.
And it's so interesting because you asked where we kind of started. I didn't know if I was going to vote for Biden or for Trump. Not only am I a conservative now I want to be an advocate for other people who don't know what their rights are, who really haven't identified their values. How can you determine what those are, learn what your rights are? Because if you don't know what they are, you don't know when they're under attack and you can't defend them. And how do you teach other people to have a voice and to speak up and stand up even when it costs you everything?
Now, as a mom, I want to ask you, how old are your children?
So I have one son and he's 13.
13. What a wonderful lesson for him, right?
Ooh, girl, it's been amazing to watch our family grow through this because what could have easily squashed us has given us a voice. It's strengthened us and we've found our purpose in it. So my son and I will go to the library board meetings or to city council and he'll get up and he'll speak and he'll address that the mayor isn't doing his job and give him a history lesson and what the Constitution says and the policies and procedures indicate. And so I can see that God is at work in this for sure.
Yes. I think we were talking before the show here, you found yourself through this. You probably, just like a lot of the moms, right? You don't realize, Sharona, your story. You don't realize how strong you are until your feet are put to the fire.
Exactly.
I mean, the FBI breaks down your house. You come from, a country that doesn't have freedom. You get canceled. All these things happen, and all of a sudden, we as moms got to figure out how we're going to be fighters for freedom, for liberty, for the Constitution, for our families, how we protect and we guide and defend. You became so strong, just like all these women became so strong. Tell us about that journey within you of fighting.
Oh, I have to give the glory to God. I was a meek, timid, people-pleasing, afraid to rock the boat, didn't want to go against the grain or speak out and offend anybody. And now I think, like you said, because I've lost it all. I've lost my reputation. We've lost our financial security. We've lost the things of this world, right? But we can't lose our joy. And so now I have the courage to speak up and to speak out because I was catapulted into this, but God has been faithful to supply us that strength and courage because when we're at our weakest, He's His strongest. And when we're spending time in the Word and getting sanctified, just spending time with Him, we're changing. And I really like this version of myself. I wouldn't change it for the world.
It's so great.
So I have to know what happened to those friends back in 2020 that said that you need to check your white privilege. Where are they now?
Oh man, I wish I knew. They're probably watching mainstream media slander me and say that I'm a political extremist, domestic domestic terrorist and a threat to democracy and saying, I knew it.
I wasn't sure if you were able to convert them to the right side of the aisle.
No, unfortunately not. There were a lot of, and it wasn't due to a lack of willingness on my end. There was just, especially with this lawsuit that's been brought against us and how we've been so mischaracterized in the media, there was such an intolerance. People, even family members that knew us, were like, I didn't know that you were a white supremacist. You can't come to Thanksgiving. And we're like, you have known us our entire lives. You should know that that is a lie. But that's the power of the media.
It is. And Joeylynn, I mean, literally my 13-year-old came home the other day and said, I Googled you, Mom. And the first thing that comes up is, I'm a white supremacist.
Yes.
And that is really devastating.
Right. Well, they change the language all the time.
Yeah.
You know, so if you're not a white supremacist, you're a homophobe,
Anti-woman.
homophobic, you're anti-woman.
Slap another label on.
Right. You know, you're an oppressor.
Yeah.
They have all of these incredible words for people that are either of faith, you know, you're a bigot. I mean, what are all these incredible terms that they come out with? And they just keep pounding them in the lamestream media. And all of a sudden the stick that stuck to you, and that's horrible.
It does stick. And then the people who consume it believe that it's true.
Yes. Oh, 100%.
So they're not going and figuring out what the real story is. They're acting on that in very hateful ways. Like y'all have all experienced hate mail and threats and cancel culture and, you know, having to read about yourself or your child having to read about you. That's hard. That's hard to balance. But again, God has built up that thick skin. So you kind of get to a point where you know you're with good people if they can read that and assume the complete opposite.
Right. And fight for you even. It's curious to me too, these people on the left usually are the ones running the kindness campaigns. It does not extend tolerance, right? Inclusivity.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion. Right, yeah.
As you've said though, and when we've talked about the First Amendment, it does not apply if you don't agree with them.
You know, it's interesting. When I ran for Texas House in 2022, I was at the polls greeting voters, and it was only those on the left that would come up and would scream at me. They would sit there and say, your children should be ashamed to have you as a mother, you know, and I'm here putting myself out there as a candidate, trying to represent family values, trying to put education as a priority, you know, and really focus on the border and just really, you know, funding just public infrastructure. And here I'm being vilified because I have a R next to my name.
It's crazy.
And apparently that means that I'm a bad mom because I'm sitting there advocating for the community and representing the community, as well as looking out for the well-being of my children.
Yeah.
If they can get them to hate you for who you are, then they forget what you stand for and your good policies.
Good one.
So they pit their followers against the people. We see that with Trump. We see that against his supporters, with Republican candidates, with good women. Because if they can get these people to hate us, then they don't connect with the value that we bring.
Yeah. And their voice is so loud. It's small.
Yes,
but they're loud. They're small, but they're obnoxious.
Yeah.
They're small, but they've got money. So it really is very, very, and they have all of the platforms. So again, that's why we have the Mom View. This is why discussions like this are so important. You were in a Trump train. You were in a parade. You and all of your friends are getting either sued, harassed, or blackballed in your community. And I'll tell you, it's tough when it's in your community. Things like this have happened to people in our community, in my community. I was a county board member. You know, I got blasted up because I went to hear the president on January 6th. And it's just, you know, I never was at the Capitol. Didn't do any of that. But it constantly, I did the Pledge of Allegiance at the RNC, and they say, insurrectionist leads the Pledge of Allegiance at the RNC. It wasn't.
Trying to minimize who you are so that nobody will listen to your message. I love how you framed that. Speaking of your children, how has your son responded to everything that's gone on? So 4 years now of lawfare against you.
It's tough on your kids.
Yeah.
It's hard. There is no getting this time back. I look literally at how much he's grown. We measure that on the wall, and I can see how much he's grown. I feel like that time has been robbed, but I reshift my perspective on that and think of it as an investment. We're investing in defending our freedoms. This is something that our founding fathers knew very well, the toll that it would take. But we get to be close as a family. And so initially, you know, he was scared. He didn't understand if we would get taken away. He was not sure if somebody was going to bust down the front door. But it's like we grow in this confidence together as a family, seeing that God provides for us even when it's uncertain. And he has blossomed. I woke up one morning at 2 a.m. and I'm like, what are you doing awake? And he's like, I'm writing a speech for city council. It's on my heart to tell this to the mayor. I got to get it down. And I'm thinking, God, what are you doing in my son's life? This could have so much more to do with my child and future generations than it has to do with me or us. But that's why we fight.
That's right.
Exactly.
So my question to you is, now that you have this kind of newfound voice that you've discovered over throughout this entire process, and a newfound platform, how are you utilizing both to try to, help America and help freedom and kind of get out the word of what you've experienced?
I love this question so much. It's interesting because the lawsuit felt like this overwhelming, all-encompassing issue. And it just does this. It shrinks. It gets smaller and smaller as we start looking at ways that we have a purpose and a meaning and a way to connect with other people. And so that starts to take a back burner and a back seat to connecting with other people, other women. And I love being able to use my social media platforms to share these videos from City Council, or to show what Jude is doing or what I'm doing, or to tell people, register to vote now. Get out the vote now. Local elections are happening now. Guys, these are the statistics. Did you know the Constitution was framed with 1,500 Bible verses? So separation of church and state is a lie.
I mean, look at you, girl. Look at you, girl.
Yes, I love it.
Yes. So I hope to be able to reach more and more people, but censorship is real. So it's a challenge.
That's what's so interesting is people forget how important local elections are. The city of Dallas actually just put out a few charter amendments for those to vote on in November. And one of those charter amendments is actually voters get to decide whether those that are not legal citizens will have the right to serve on a city board. So these local elections matter. So it's important to use your platform to tell people to get out to vote, not just at the midterm and the presidential elections, but most importantly at these local elections.
Absolutely. All right, girls, we're going to talk about the lawsuit right after the break. Joeylynn's attorney joins us to talk about the legal aspects of her lawsuit. We'll also see that footage of the Biden-Harris campaign bus. So stay with us. This is going to be very interesting. We'll be right back.
We've all heard the old saying, every vote counts, right? Well, maybe you think your vote couldn't possibly make a difference. Maybe you think your one vote is insignificant or irrelevant. You are not insignificant, and your one vote can have a huge impact. Moms like us care deeply about our children and grandchildren. Our culture, our values, the economy, and our freedoms are all extremely important to us. As moms, we must be engaged. We need to vote our values. Yes, every vote does count. And when we unite our one vote with the votes of moms all across the country, it's no longer just an election. It's a movement.
All right, welcome back to the Mom View. We're talking about defending our free speech today on the show. Joeylynn Mesaros and her husband Robert have been sued because they drove their MAGA decorated truck alongside a Biden-Harris campaign bus. Wow. Well, Jerad Nejvar is the attorney that's defending their case, and he's joining us today on the set along with Joeylynn. And again, Sarah is on the set here with us today. So welcome, Jerad.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. Well, this is a crazy story. And we touched on the fact that Joeylynn has this lawsuit being brought against her, but you're the expert. Can you just give us the basis of it? And then we're going to have a lot of questions for us, because this really is a piece of insanity.
Yeah, and well, there's two ways to explain it. One, which I'll start with, is what the plaintiffs claim about what happened. So their theory is that they were driving along in this massive Biden-Harris campaign bus, October 2020. That day they started in South Texas, in I think McAllen or Laredo, and they were driving up I-35 to Austin. And they claim that when this Trump caravan of, Trump train or Trump decorated vehicles converged on the highway in the vicinity of the bus when it came up through San Antonio and New Braunfels, that the plaintiff's claim is that they were so terrified, so intimidated, that by the way, by reckless driving, by people, surrounding them with flags on their cars for Trump, that it actually dissuaded them, intimidated them out of giving their support for Biden and Harris, for voters to go, vote for them in the election.
It's like an election interference kind of thing?
Well, it's election interference. The claim is that the intimidation scared them away from going to campaign stops that they had planned that day. Okay. And so they claim that they canceled some campaign events, and all because they were so terrorized because despite the fact that they were driving a massive multi-ton bus down I-35 at regular speeds, that people in Trump-decorated vehicles around them had caused them, some kind of KKK type terror.
You would have thought that the cars were trying to drive them off the road, or they were, doing something absolutely crazy. But again, you were just driving by the bus.
We were just driving by the bus. Now, mainstream media said we tried to run the bus off the road, like we talked about earlier. And so hysteria formed around these claims. And it wasn't until 8 months later, when these individuals have actually taken positions in the White House, or, Biden has taken his position as president in the Oval Office, that they brought this lawsuit against us, and they released this information on CNN before we were even served the paperwork or they filed the court documents.
So tell us what it actually, what you think about this, when Joeylynn obviously had to get legal a defense.
Well, it's just ludicrous. At bottom, it's a complete abuse of the judicial system. It's the Democrats trying to impose an utter double standard against people speaking out, for Trump in that case. But we see this all the time. It's the same thing you see in other contexts. If you don't support the leftist ideology, woke principles, or in this case, Biden or Harris in 2020, then you don't have a right to speak up.
Right.
You don't, the bus, like I said, this is a massive multi-ton bus driving down the freeway, with a Biden-Harris campaign message wrapped around it. And they're complaining because people, supporting Trump and for re-election in 2020 had Trump flags on their cars.
Driving by them.
It's just insane. There is no legal claim. In fact, this cannot be allowed to proceed and to succeed in this case, the plaintiff's theory, because it would vitiate the First Amendment protections that we all enjoy. People have a right, just as they had a right to drive on the freeway. Joeylynn and Robert had a right to put a Trump flag on their truck and drive along I-35. Most of the time they were behind the bus. They were trying to maintain a kind of a Trump caravan, like a Trump train, as they normally are, and the bus was never intimidated, certainly not by my clients. The whole thing is completely fabricated. I won't get into too much of the specific facts because I don't want to give the plaintiffs, a roadmap for how we're going to argue this case with the evidence at trial. But we are really excited to go to trial, which is coming up soon, because the facts are going to finally come out.
So, Jerad, this is footage from inside the bus. The staffers are actually taking this footage right out of the bus, right?
Right. And this is an example of how the plaintiff's own evidence is going to prove our case and not theirs.
Okay, let's take a look.
I'm pushing him. I'll put that bumper right on his push him. I'll push him all the way down the highway. Yeah, I'm gonna run right over one of them. I'll put that bumper right on his push him. A little bit, but they see I'm kind of like blocking both lanes. Right. I push his ass to get in there. I'm sure we'll hit it. I'll hit it. Tell it, y'all hit it. I'm pushing.
Not gonna be putting your blinker on, right?
No blinkers today. I'll put my blinker off to the left. Then I wait, I get right up on that white line and whip it right in there.
There you go. Woo! See you later, asshole.
Come back up the wrong way.
Bye. That's how we say that. Bye. Bye. Oh, he probably like, ooh.
Sarah. What do we say about this?
I think my mouth is on the ground.
I know.
I mean, it's just that is some pretty damning evidence. There clearly was not any fear on behalf of those that were on the Biden bus.
Right.
The fact that they're blatantly now, being the aggressor or having the intent or the idea of potentially being the aggressor here, it's clear, this evidence that they are not in fear for themselves, the safety, and
exactly.
It is eye-opening.
Yeah, it is eye-opening. So how did you acquire this? How did this process all work?
Joeylynn and Robert somehow found me. I think I was referred to them by somebody else. And, she might be able to speak to that, but from what I recall...
No, but how did you find the footage? That's what I meant.
Oh,
Sorry.
the footage. I'm sorry.
I know they found you because you're a good man and Jesus always brings who we need.
Right.
But how did you find this footage?
This is a video recorded by, I believe in this case, from Wendy Davis. She was one of the plaintiffs suing my clients. So in other words, a political elitist, you could say, a surrogate for the Biden campaign, is suing, homeschool mom and plumber dad, claiming that she was intimidated away from exercising her right to support Biden on that day. But this was her video from inside the bus. Right. And they had to turn it over to us in discovery. And it's just an illustration of how arrogant this lawsuit and these plaintiffs and their attorneys are, and how misleading it is. Because when you actually watch the video, what they did in their complaint is they cherry pick little snippets which don't even involve my clients. And
okay, what's an important part?
And they create this narrative for the court, and it's a bold-faced lie. When you watch the videos, and this is not the only one we have, you see that really, if anybody was aggressive on the road, it was mostly the bus. Mm-hmm. It was Biden supporting vehicles, driving also around the bus. It certainly wasn't the Mesaroses.
Isn't that always what we see, is that the left says that the right is doing what they are actually already doing themselves? We just heard at the DNC that, oh Lord, if Trump takes office, he's going to weaponize the DOJ against his political opponents. Right. What do we already see? We're experiencing the same lawfare that's happening to Trump.
So now, are they targeting others that were in the Trump train or just you?
So there were initially 5 defendants that were listed. Okay. 2 have settled, and they added 2 more. Is that, so far 6 of us are going to court.
I see.
Yeah,
yes.
And the 2 that settled were unrepresented, not young individuals, like barely in their adults, almost teenagers, who, not represented by counsel, and they were basically so scared of potential liability that they agreed to settle, because the plaintiffs basically let them off with, just signing an agreement that they dropped the case in return for sort of some sort of apology coerced by the plaintiffs' counsel. And now they plan to use that statement from these settling defendants in court against us.
So for context, Wendy Davis, correct me if I'm wrong, she ran for Texas governor against Abbott, 7 years ago?
She did, and at this time was running for Congress against Chip Roy.
That's right. And then I think, doesn't she have a self-proclaimed nickname?
Oh, yes.
Is it Abortion Barbie?
Mm-hmm. It is.
No.
It's
terrible.
That is interesting. So how do you get your life back? Like, what is the recourse here? So what does that look like? Because
where do you go?
All along, we knew we didn't do anything wrong. We knew this was a farce.
Right.
What we were learning as we went was how it impacted the American people. How essentially we've been handpicked by God to represent the American people, to stand up for free speech rights, because what happens here will set federal precedent for free speech rights and how the law can be weaponized against other people. And so there was no option to quit. It wasn't an option for us to settle or to apologize. Regardless of the cost, we wanted to fight back because we knew that we needed to guarantee or continue to ensure these guaranteed freedoms that come first from God but are secured by our Constitution. And so quitting wasn't an option. Although they did try to force us to settle, we fought that and the motion was defeated. We're headed to trial now, and Jerad might want to talk about the fact that there's a development of a plaintiff that dropped out.
This only gets juicier.
Yeah, and I want to just to finish that point. I'm so honored and proud to represent Joeylynn and Robert.
Nice.
And to be involved in this case, because I think in the end, whether it's a trial, I think we're going to win a trial, even with the Travis County jury. But even if we don't, I think we'll win on First Amendment grounds on appeal. And we're going to go as high as it needs to go, and that could be the U.S. Supreme Court.
Interesting.
The principles here are really, really important. And it takes people like this. I think the plaintiffs thought that everybody in this Trump train, everybody who they sued, would just throw in the towel and be so, scared by the lawsuit, by being dragged into federal court. There are literally more than 24 attorneys of record representing the plaintiffs from law firms in Washington, D.C. and New York City.
No.
Some of them from Texas, but also from big, major law firms outside Texas. And, what you have to ask the lawyer, I asked myself, why would they Why would they? There's no need. Often you have a lot of lawyers working on a case, but they're not listed on all the pleadings.
Okay.
All their names are not listed on the complaint and all the subpoenas. And they did it here in this case specifically because they wanted to intimidate everybody who they subpoenaed, everybody who they sued. Right. And, they got some of the young, unrepresented defendants to settle.
And they want to win, clearly.
Right.
Because this will change, just our future. Right? I could just imagine, like, if you had a Trump flag or an American flag and you drive up, next to a campaign bus or anything else. I mean, these
rallies across America, these boat
gets
parades.
super weird.
Yep. It sure does.
Well, it's so strange. These are plaintiffs who were literally campaigning for Kamala Harris, who at the time, had just bailed out a bunch of actual rioters from Minnesota, the Minnesota Freedom Fund, people rioting, throwing Molotov cocktails, destroying, cities in America, claim that they were so intimidated by people driving with a Trump flag. But just to get to Joeylynn's comment earlier, one of the plaintiffs, the lead plaintiff in the case, a guy named Eric Cervini, he was kind of a surrogate for the Biden campaign at the time, dropped. So we're now 3+ years in this lawsuit, a couple, getting close to trial. And all of a sudden, he wants to walk away. He files a motion to dismiss the claims.
And why?
And this is another interesting part of the case. I'm not allowed under an order by the court to tell you exactly why, but I can lay out the timeline. Because he wanted to drop the case. Pretty soon after, we actually had the gumption to tell the people publicly what he had been up to since the case, which included coming to Texas in a rainbow bus to hand out or to make available books with pornography that are prohibited in certain Texas communities or under Texas law. He made it his business to, set up this company that specifically goes around the country doing this, handing out books that have been banned because they're pornographic, essentially. And
I guess if you're going to get in the game and you want to bully you, not that you're bullying him back, but you're revealing.
That's right.
In truth, light shines in the darkness.
That's right.
And I think this is just this here's an example of the light shining in the darkness.
Amen.
They had an agenda. They wanted to bully you. They wanted to hurt you. They wanted to silence you. And let the light shine.
Let
See
the
who
light
you
shine.
are.
The dam is breaking.
Yeah.
There's Swiss cheese holes in their claims against us. We can't wait for the truth to come out. And this is the reward for people that stand strong and depend on God to provide for them. We are starting to see the tide turning, and we can't wait to get a win for the American people.
And you said you can't wait.
Yeah, I mean, what I just about their plaintiff walking away, months before trial, is just one of the instances like that. Every time we've stood up and had the gumption to stand up and push back, they have backtracked in some way. Early on in the case, the bus driver originally claimed that he had lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in income because he was so traumatized he couldn't drive a bus commercially after this event.
When I need to play that video again. Are you kidding me?
When I all I did was send a standard discovery request in the case saying, okay, show me your financial records, show me what jobs you turned down, show me the difference in your income. And they immediately backed off and said that, we're not going to ask for that. So, because they didn't want to turn over the facts.
Sure. I'm curious, that I'm sure all the viewers are. Has President Trump weighed in on this matter? Has he reached out? Have you heard anything? I'm just curious because it was the Trump train in support of his election.
He weighed in beforehand. He shared a tweet when we were driving next to the bus. He shared the video on Twitter and said, "I love Texas," which they've put in the 62-page civil complaint. But since then, we have not gotten to connect with Trump on this matter, though we absolutely would love to, because we are standing strong alongside of him to save America.
Well, you guys, I don't want to say congratulations already, but I know you're going to do well. And I know that truth prevails. And I hate the fact that you had to go through this, but you're stronger. Look at you, Mama. Look at you, Mama Bear.
Glory to God. That's right. We call ourselves free speech defenders, and we believe that's what we've been called by God to do. And we encourage others to stand with us and lock shields and do the same.
Thanks, Jerad. We appreciate you. There's not a lot of attorneys that are taking up cases like this. Because they're concerned about their future or their practice. So thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, no, and thank you for telling the story.
All right, guys. Well, right after the break, we'll wrap our thoughts on this fight for freedom on the couch. And we'll also hear a little bit about Sharona's story. Stay with us.
What kind of America do you want to leave future generations? What do you want America to look like for your children and your grandchildren? Our nation is at a crossroads, and it will be us, the mothers of America, who will determine the future of our country. What we teach and nurture in the hearts of our children and how we vote will make all the difference. If you love God, respect life, honor family, and cherish freedom, then use your voice and be heard. We teach these values in our home. Let's secure them with our vote.
Well, today we've seen how important it is to continue to fight for our constitutional freedoms when they're under attack, when they're trying to silence us, and they're really trying to destroy us. So, ladies, we're freedom fighters here. We're warriors here fighting for our freedoms. And I just wanted to have you, maybe, Sharona, some of the moms have not maybe heard your story, just briefly.
Yeah.
The FBI knocked down your door because you were speaking out. And
Very
you were,
loudly.
Yeah.
Very loudly, having success, being a very vocal parent. You know, one of the things is you don't have the right because you don't have these letters or you're not in this particular club. And that's something right away that we have to reject. As mothers, we absolutely have the right to do whatever we need to do to defend and protect our kids. We had 13 school boards flip in 2021. We'd had a new congressional incredible voice for our state and our country, Lauren Boebert, be elected. All of these things I was a part of and helping to organize, and we were super loud, super public on Facebook, on social media, calling out the district attorney, calling out the governor, calling them all out. And people are like, whoa, what's going on? Reading legislation that was passing in our state, and people couldn't believe it. They were shocked. They could not believe government would do this. And then, of course, the last thing was elections, pointing out that our elections are not secure in Colorado. They're not the gold standard. They're not secure in all of this country. And it's so awesome to have people like Eric Prince and Elon Musk validating that now. But at the time, we knew it because we knew our town, we knew our community, we know who we are. And when the results of an election do not reflect that, you get curious. So yeah, being a very vocal, outspoken person regarding elections, the FBI raided my home on November 16th, 2021. And the interesting thing is we just wrapped up the trial for Tina Peters. She was the clerk that I had brought information to. She secured images of the voting machines that are now being played out in courtrooms across this country. And she is definitely a hero. She is definitely a warrior and a hero, but she's been villainized. What we learned during the trial was that they always knew that I didn't have it. I had done nothing. They always knew that. But I was loud, I was vocal, I was shining a light on them, and they chose to use force. My home was the only home that they used force on. They took a battering ram to my door. They had their guns out and drawn at my husband and I.
You were homeschooling that morning.
I literally was homeschooling. Just pulled a berry cobbler out of the oven, you guys. Like,
I FBI bust down your door.
I have to believe when those agents from 4 different states came into my house and saw the cobbler, they were a little ashamed. And at one point, one even said, if it's any consolation, you have a beautiful family. To which I said, I did not invite you in here. Don't talk about my family.
Right.
But at the end of the day, they did that to try to shut me up.
Sure they did.
And the reality is that in this country, you can't allow that to happen. Joeylynn, you know, what she's doing, doubling down, fighting the good fight, not allowing them to silence her. Sarah, you know, going on and not letting them stop you from doing what God is calling you to do. We have to double down. We can't get afraid. We can't go shy away in a corner and go, well, that really disrupted my family. When we look at the founders and we look at what they were willing to do, what they were willing to sacrifice, we have to be the people that they hoped we would be in order to maintain this republic. And that's how I see it now.
Not only for ourselves, but the lessons we're teaching our children when we stand up.
Yes.
When we don't remain silent.
Absolutely.
Kimberly, you always say freedom or liberty is hanging in the balance. You know, and you just don't think about that because it's always been here.
We kind of take advantage of it, and it's, you know, there's the 4th of July, there's the fireworks, and we're like, oh, we're patriotic.
We take it for granted.
It is, but it's very different. Being patriotic and understanding what it means to live in this free land and preserve it that's the difference between patriotism and a patriot. And all of those words have become bad now. And now we're trying to promote patriotism. We can't even love those standards, those foundational standards that this nation was built on. And those principles are what tie us all together. And I tell people all the time, it's not about me trying to convince you that you're wrong and I'm right. It's just simply we should all agree on those foundational principles of the Constitution and Declaration of Independence that protect the individual rights of everyone.
But I think also, Kimberly says that we take it for granted. I moved to Texas from California in 2015. A little bit of a California refugee. I got here as fast as I could. But part of the reason why I fell in love with Dallas and Texas is when you would drive down the streets of these neighborhoods, you'd see not just one flag, you'd see two. You'd see the American flag and the Texas flag on every single house. And it felt like such pride and just admiration for America and just for the great state of Texas. But you see the shift, and we are taking it for granted. I drive down the streets. I am the only house on my street that has an American flag.
Yes.
The Texas flag no longer really waves in the city of Dallas. And it's slowly happening, and we take it for granted. So we really need people that are putting family first, freedom first, America first to step up and really pay attention to what's happening in our schools, in our communities, what's happening in the local government and state government, because it's up to us to tell the legislators this is not okay.
Right.
We don't want our children to be groomed in schools. We don't want to co-parent with the government.
Exactly.
You are there to provide basic curriculum and nothing outside of that, right? You are here to provide basic services for us, safety, well-paved roads. That is what you're here to exist for.
Liberty and freedom are not free, right? Like anybody that has served our country, whether you're a veteran, you're currently serving as military or a first responder, or even running for office, or even sitting in office, or even working as a poll worker, you understand that service requires a very significant level of sacrifice, whether it's your money, your time, or your life. And sometimes it's all three, and it doesn't matter what you're called. I ran for school board in 22. I didn't win, but I was the first school board candidate to ever be endorsed by a sitting governor in the history of American politics. And I was called the most egregious names. I was called white supremacist and blackface. I was called an Uncle Tom. I was called a race traitor. I was called literally everything in the book, all because I stood on principle and I would not back down. And it wasn't just the Democrats, it was also the GOP. Yes. Don't go there. It's a waste of time. You're not getting any support from us because you're too loud. You're too vocal. You're too, all of these things. And I'm like, isn't that what we're supposed to be? We are the people. We the people. If you're not here to serve we the people, you need to find something else to do.
But it works though, because if you look at the last legislative session here in Texas, I mean, they passed sweeping bills that prohibited the gender modification surgeries under the age of 18.
It does. So much that Sharona put her kids back in school.
Yes. And then DEI, they no longer allow that in universities that are publicly funded by the state of Texas, so they wouldn't know what's happening in our schools and our classrooms if people like you are not loud or not running for office. We're not putting our kids in public schools. How are those making policy going to know unless we're loud? So kudos to you, because I think it's a large reason of why we've gotten some of the legislative agendas passed to protect our family and our parental rights.
Well, we are loud and we are proud. We are the Mom View. We are restoring patriotism all across the country. We believe that patriots, America, liberty, freedom is essential to us as mothers, essential to the history, the future of America. We love you. Thanks for joining us on the Mom View. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Joeylynn. We so appreciate everybody here joining us. God bless you guys.